In this next module, we're going to look at, from a high availability perspective, the benefits of knowing the replication technology. We're going to go over the terminology briefly. We're going to go over the types of replication. We're going to look at some pros and cons and the monitoring and troubleshooting of replication. I really like replication. I think it's one of the most underutilized features or technologies provided within the SQL Server stack. So what is replication? Replication copies our data in our database objects. There's three types of replication you'll hear us typically talk about. There's going to be snapshot, transactional, and peer-to-peer, and also merge replication. You'll hear us speak about the publisher, the distributor, and the subscriber. The publisher is just that. It's the publish of the data. The distributor distributes the published data. And where does that distributor put the data or publish that data to? That's right, as you guessed, the subscriber. You can have many subscribers per publisher. You can use this to offload only required data to a report server. For example, you can replicate only a subset of tables, and you can even go further and filter out data. And we'll look at that further down in the slide deck. It's also important to point out that you don't have automatic failover with replication. It just moves the data or those objects that you've identified to your subscriber. You have to code for an outage. So whereas some of the other technologies we're going to talk about, they'll have automatic failure. In this case, your code needs to be able to take advantage of your subscriber if you want to build it into a high availability solution. So here you can see we have a slide that with a diagram showing what replication is. It's the copying and distributing of data and database objects from one database to another. It distributes data to different work locations or different locations to remote users over different networks. You could also use it that way. Here on the screen, you can see we have our custom applications, and one is pointing to our publisher, and that publisher has some articles in it. It communicates via our distributor to our subscriber. It utilizes replication agents, which we'll look at a little further down in the slide deck. And these replication agents push the data to our subscriber or our articles from the publication. Replication typically consists of three steps. We're going to have our initial synchronization, or otherwise known as our snapshot. Our data changes on the publisher are picked up by our distributor, which we described a little earlier on, and the distribution agent flows those data changes to our subscribers. So it's important to mention here typically you have three types of replication that are spoken of in the community, and you'll have your transactional, your merge, your snapshot. You'll also hear about peer-to-peer occasionally. So let's talk briefly about transactional replication. The log reader agent on the distributor reads the data changes out of the transaction log on our publisher, up here at the top of our slide. The distribution agent flows data changes to our subscriber. So here we have our distributor agent, and here we have our subscriber. The changes are applied to our subscriber in the same order and within the same transaction boundaries as they occurred in our publisher. So when the subscriber reads the data, it is being received in the same order as it was applied in the publisher, taking care of our referential integrity. I think it's important to note and just go over the publisher, distributor, and subscriber methodology here, because it's going to be the same or similar when we talk about the other forms of replication. So here we have our custom application up at the top. We have our publisher, which has a set of articles. Our transaction log picks up any changes to these articles within our publication. Our log reader agent then pulls any information here from our distributor, which is stored within our distribution database. Our distribution agent then, which are SQL agent jobs, pushes this information out to our subscriber, which could live on the same server or it could live on a remote server. And remember, we can have multiple of these subscribers, and you can have the same articles in each of these subscribers across your environment. Now that we've spoken about transactional replication, let's take a quick look at merge replication. Our data changes and our schema modifications are tracked via triggers within merge replication. This happens on both the publisher and the subscriber side. The subscriber will synchronize with our publisher. It's much different than transactional replication where the data flow is one way. In this case, any changes that take place on your publisher or subscriber are kept in sync. The SQL Server Snapshot agent and our merge agent that you'll see resolve any conflicts that take place between your publisher and your subscriber. Each row is uniquely identified in every published table. So it's going to identify and uniquely take each row and add an identifier to it within your subscriber and your publisher to avoid conflicts. Our next form of replication that we're going to talk about is snapshot replication. This is probably one of the easiest forms of replication to set up. It also provides us with the ability to move data from one place to another real easily. Snapshot replication, what it does is it distributes the data as it existed at that specific moment in time. An entire snapshot is generated by our snapshot agent. The distribution agent then flows that file to the subscriber. The snapshot completely overwrites the existing data on the subscriber side. So let's say you had a database in your production environment, database A. That database or EventureWorks, that database A or EventureWorks would then have a snapshot taken of it. This entire snapshot, would then be applied to your subscriber via the distribution agent. Keep in mind, this is a complete overwrite of the subscriber database, all your subscriptions down there. So if you just wanted to easily move a database without having to do a backup and recovery, this works great over the network or to disparate sites. You can use this if you don't have the ability to do backups and restores over the network. It's also a great way to replicate your database without a large impact to your production database. So let's say if you knew your data only changed once every 24 hours, you could take a snapshot in the evening, let's say 2 a.m., and just move the entire data set to your reporting database server, offloading the work, and then your business or your finance or your legal department could parse through this snapshot during the day. Also, please keep in mind when the snapshot is being completed, the database is offline on the subscriber side. The publisher stays up and it's fine. The distributor stays up and it's fine, but that subscriber is offline during the snapshot. Essentially, it's what you would do to sync a transactional replication. So we may have touched over some of these already, but let's go over the replication pros and cons. Some of the pros are you can publish to many subscribers, so you could have one publisher and many subscribers. You could have a set of tables going to, with a filter going to subscriber 1. You could have a set of tables with different filters going to subscriber 2, and so on and so forth. It provides you the ability to move data to many different places. It's transactionally consistent. Potentially there's less coding if you use transactional replication or merge replication or snapshot replication. You don't have to have code put in place and checked out to be able to move data from your point A to point B. There's a very robust GUI that you can utilize when you're learning transactional merge or snapshot replication. It has built-in synchronization. It has built-in monitoring, which we'll go over in one of the slide decks, as well as in one of the slides within the module, as well as one of the demos at the end. It has some built-in recovery. You can control how frequent the data is moved or replicated to your subscribers. Some cons here, it could increase administration based on your subs and your objects. The more replication you put into your environment, there's more administration cost to that. It's got to be monitored, it's got to be kept up to date, and we'll go over some additional items towards the end of this module that you need to keep in mind when you set up replication. A huge con is there's no automated failover. If you're going to use this for high availability purposes, you have to build into your code a mechanism that will point to your subscriber. you can't transform data in transit. There's other pieces of the stack that we won't be going over in the high availability modules, such as Service Broker, that would allow you to transform that data while it was in transit. However, in our case, you can't do that here. You can, however, filter data, but there is a performance hit when doing that. Now that we've discussed the terminology that is referred to or used when setting up transactional merge or snapshot replication, let's look at some of the considerations that you should take within your environment. Let's first look at the distribution database considerations. You're going to require additional space for your snapshot folder. For example, if your data is 100 gigs in size, you'll need additional space wherever you drop the initial snapshot for the database. You're going to require additional space for the distribution database. I've seen distribution databases, dependent upon how much work there is, 30, 40, 50 gig in size, even larger than that. It's all dependent upon how many transactions, how many publications and subscribers you have within your environment. Your push subscriptions will require additional processing on the server. So if you're pushing from your production environment where your publication database resides, there will be some overhead on your server. There's some configurations we need to keep in mind when looking at the distribution database. We need to look at where we're going to place a snapshot folder. We'll go over that a little bit when we look at the demo of setting up transactional and snapshot replication. We also have to have a name and location for our distribution database. You need to know that. You can have a centralized distribution database where multiple remote publishers can publish to that distribution database, and then you have subscribers somewhere outside of the distribution server. You need to know the name and location for your distribution database when setting up your publishers and subscribers. And you need to have your connections set up for remote publishers. If you have publishers coming into a distribution database that sits off on another server, you need to make sure you have the connections set up for those remote publishers. We'll go over that when we set up a transactional replication. Some considerations when setting up our publication database. Our publication is going to be accessible during the creation and its initial snapshot. We're not going to be taking our publication database offline. The database cannot be renamed after publication. There's dependencies around it, and SQL Server won't let us rename that database. All objects dependent upon each other must be published. So if you have a primary key, foreign key relationship, or if you have stored procedures and tables you're publishing, if they're dependent upon each other, those have to be published. And there's some special characters here that publication names cannot contain. We have some configurations when we set up transactional, merge, or snapshot replication. We have some configurations we can set up within the publication. We can set up which distributor the publication is going to. We can set up the location of our snapshot files. We can set up the publication database, the name of the database. We can set up what type of publication we want to create. In this case, merge, snapshot, transactional, peer-to-peer replication, we would define that here. We can define which data and database objects, also known as articles, to include in the publication. We can have static row filters and column filters for all types of publications, and parameterized row filters and join filters for merge publications. So it's things to keep in mind when you set up your publication. We can also define the snapshot agent schedule. If we're going to have a snapshot published every so often so that we have it available in case there's issues on the subscriber, we can schedule that. We define what accounts under which the agents will run. For example, we're going to have the snapshot agent, we're going to have the publication agent, we're going to have all these different agents, and we'll look at those in the demo, but we can define what accounts those run under. And we can have a name and a description for our publication. Just like you have distributor and publisher database considerations, you have subscription database considerations. You want to decide, am I going to do a push or pull subscription? How frequent and what type of replication helps us decide whether we use push or pull subscriptions. Also, do we want to offload the work from our production server? If we have the CPU cycles, or if we have the cycles available on the publication database server, we may want to make it a push subscription. If we want to offload some of that work, we might want to make it a pull. We could also define if we have non-SQL Server subscribers, such as Oracle and IBM DB2. We can connect and utilize these different database platforms as subscribers of our SQL Server publisher. When we set up our subscription database, we have some configuration options available to us. Once again, we have the name of the publication that we're going to be subscribing to. We would have the name of the subscriber in the subscription database where we're pushing the data to. The distribution agent or merge agent runs at a distributor or our subscriber. Our distribution agent or merge agent schedule for our subscription. Whether or not the snapshot agent should create an initial snapshot for the subscription, and whether or not the distribution agent or merge agent should apply that snapshot at the subscriber, so we can define that at configuration time. We would also, once again, define what accounts our distribution agent or merge agent will run under. This way we can secure our publication, our subscription, and our distribution, so we can secure the data we're moving through our whichever form of replication we decide to use. And for merge replication, we can define whether the type of subscription is server or client. Now, as we've moved through our definitions and what types of replication, some of the terminology around replication, we're back to what is snapshot replication again. It's important to just go over one more time, because we're going to look at a demo after this, what snapshot replication is. Snapshot replication, it distributes the data as it existed at a specific moment in time. So if we took a snapshot 24 hours ago, that's what our snapshot is going to exist. It's not going to exist of any data post when the snapshot took place. It's the entire snapshot is generated by our snapshot agent. Our distribution agent flows the data file to our subscriber, and this snapshot completely overwrites the subscriber that was there. So any data that was there prior to that is lost. So if any changes or anything were made at that subscriber, they're completely overwritten. If, for example, you're doing this from production to dev for your developers to test data on, if they're expecting a static set of data and their data points reference back to data that was restored a week ago, once you overwrite this, they've lost any testing that they've done, or they need to be notified that their data points may have changed. So let's get into a quick demo of setting up snapshot replication. All right, welcome to our first high availability demo. In this demo, we're going to look at how to create a snapshot replication. The first thing we need to do is we're going to have a shared drive. So we need to make sure we have a drive that is shared across the network. And in this case, we have set up, if we look here, a REPL data share. So we'll have SQL 2016 HA node 1 / REPL data. This is going to be important when we create the snapshot and it's shared to our subscriber servers. I'm going to hit cancel here. Now that we have that done, we can go and we can set up replication. So we have our SQL 2016 HA node 1 and our SQL 2016 HA node 2. These two servers here are going to be utilized for our replication. SQL 2016 HA node 1 is going to be the publisher, and it's going to also host our distribution database. SQL 2016 HA node 2 is going to be the subscriber of our data. We're going to right mouse click on replication. The first thing we need to do is we need to configure our distribution database. This is the first time we've set up replication, so we don't have a distribution database yet in place. We're going to click next on the splash screen here. You can choose not to show this again next time you open the page. We're going to click next. Here we're going to be provided the ability for our distributor. It's going to ask us where we want to set it up. SQL 2016 HA node 1 is going to act as its own distributor. It's going to host a distribution database. So we're going to select that radio button for the purpose of this demo. You could also have your distributor already set up or hosted on another server. I'm going to hit next. This is the snapshot folder. This is that folder we looked at the beginning of this demo. Here is where we're going to paste our SQL 2016 HA Node 1 REPL data. This is the network device that we're going to put our snapshot data into when we create a snapshot. It will also be utilized by the subscriber to apply that data to the remote side, so SQL 2016 HA Node 2. We're going to hit next. Here we're given the choice of naming our distribution database and what file folders we want to have them located on. We're going to keep the distribution name the default of distribution. We're going to place it on FMS SQL data, and we're going to put the log on LMS SQL log. These are essentially where you want your data and log file, your MDF and LDF files to go to. Best practices apply here, so you should put your F and L on your data and log on separate drives, just like you would any of your normal user databases. If you expect to have a heavily used distribution database, you could actually put those on individual data and log drives. We're going to hit next here. Here we're defining what server we want to enable to use this distributor. In this case, we're going to say publisher SQL 2016 HA Node 1 is going to use the distribution database. I'm going to click next. Here we're going to select configure distribution, and you have two choices here. You can configure your distribution, which you can check while you're running the configuration wizard, and you can also choose to generate a script file with the steps to configure the distribution. I always check this and save it to a folder located on the drive, and then I check it into my code repository somewhere. This enables us to be able to recreate the distribution database if need be, and we could also use those scripts if we're going to create additional distribution databases and we have a scripted out mechanism. We have a deployable mechanism that we can redo over and over again. We're going to click next. It's going to ask us where we want to put this file. I'm just going to leave it in the default folder, C user SQL admin documents, and I'm going to leave the default name of configure distribution. You could name it whatever you want. I'm going to choose overwrite existing file just in case one exists out there. Make sure you're not overwriting a good one, but this way you have one good solid file you can check in the TFS. We're going to click next. On this screen here, it shows all the actions that are going to be performed and how SQL Server, the configuration distribution wizard, is going to set up your distribution database. We're going to hit finish. Upon successful completion, all three of these should show success with the little green check mark. You can see here that we configured the distributor database, we enabled publishing on SQL 2016 HA Node 1, and we generated our script file. All were successful. Our next step now is to set up our local publication. We're going to go over here. Underneath replication, we've hit the plus sign. We find our local publications. We're going to right mouse click. We're going to select new publication. You'll get your splash screen. Once again, you can choose not to show this next time it starts up. We're going to click next. We're going to select the Worldwide Importers database. That's going to be our new publication database. That's where we're going to publish our articles from. We're choosing snapshot publication for this demo. We're going to click next. For the purpose of this demo, we're just going to choose one table to replicate. In this case, we're going to choose the orders table. Now keep in mind that this is just for a demo purpose. If you had surrounding tables that needed to support the order table that we're replicating in this snapshot, you would need to have those items selected here as well. This is just for the purpose of this demo so that it completes in a timely fashion. So we're going to choose our orders table. We're going to click next. And here you see the option to filter out table rows. So let's click on add. Inside our orders table, we have, let's say, order ID. If we don't want a particular order ID to go through to our snapshot, our snapshotted database, or over to the subscriber, shall we say, it should say, of the publisher, we can filter that here. And you can see here provides a where clause where you can put in a deterministic value. You're going to hit cancel here. We're not going to filter out by anything. And remember that when you implement filtering, there can be performance degradation of your replication. We're going to click next. We're going to choose to create our snapshot immediately and keep the snapshot available to initialize subscription. Also, you can note, if you notice here, you can schedule your snapshot agent to run at a following time. So if we were to select that checkbox and hit change, here you can see it pops up the new job scheduler. It's the job scheduler you're used to when you schedule any jobs within the SQL Server agent. You would utilize this to say, I want to create my snapshot and run it at midnight or 2 a.m. If you know that you're making a change and you want a fresh snapshot for later usage, you can schedule it here. We're going to check that for this demo. Click next. Here we were provided the choice of security. We're going to click on security settings. We're going to run under a Windows account for this demo. Here you could run under the SQL Server agent account if you wanted to. I don't normally do that. Normally I set up an account, a Windows account that will run my replication to tighten the security so that not everybody knows the particular username and password. Just secures your data a little bit more. And in this case, it's Dan's DC/SQL admin. Put in our password here. When we connect to the publisher, I know SQL admin has access to the publisher. So I'm going to impersonate this Windows account when I connect to the publisher. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click next. Here, once again, we're given the option to create our publication as well as generate a script file. I'm going to choose to generate a script file. That way, if I need to rebuild this or I want to run this elsewhere, I have a repeatable process. I click next. I'm going to drop it to that location. I'm going to overwrite an existing file in case one is out there. Now make sure you're not overwriting your good one. But all these .SQL scripts should be checked into some sort of code repository like TFS when you're completed with your tasks. And click next. We're going to give our publication name. Our publication name is going to be Wide World Importers _pub. If you have a naming standard within your environment that you need to adhere to, you can include your publication name into those naming standards. Click Finish. Here you'll see that here we created our publication. The article, our table that we added, was added to the publication. It started the snapshot agent and it generated our script file for us. So we can hit close here. And over here you can verify that that was done by looking at your local publications. And here you can see our worldwide importers _pub was successfully completed. This next step in our process is to create a subscriber of our publisher. So we need to create a publication. So we're going to right mouse click on the publication and we're going to click on New Subscriptions. So right mouse click, New Subscriptions. Splash screen is going to pop up. You can choose not to see this again next time you run. Here we can choose the publication for which we want to create one or more subscribers. So we have our publisher, SQL HA No 1. If we have multiple publishers, we could see that in our drop down here. Here on SQL HA No 1, it gives us a list of our database and publications. For the purpose of this demo, we're going to use worldwide importers _pub. That's highlighted. We're going to click next. So here we can choose to run all of our agents at the distributor, or we could run the agent at the subscriber. So this really depends where you want to offload the work to. In this case, this would be our publisher database. This would be our distributor database. That may not work well within your environment. If you have a heavily utilized production environment and you're running all this here and you're trying to offload work because it's busy, you may not want to do that. You may want to choose run each agent at its subscriber, which is a pull subscription. The work of pulling the information would be done on, in this case, our subscriber is going to be SQL 2016 HA Node 2 For the purpose of this demo, we're just going to select SQL 2016 HA Node 1 and make this a push subscription. And click Next. Now we have to choose our subscriber. So here we're going to add a subscriber. You can see here it already knows I'm on SQL 2016 HA Node 1, but what we're trying to do here is we're trying to offload our work. So we're going to add a SQL Server subscriber. We're going to click Add Subscriber, Add SQL Server Subscriber. Here you can see here you could choose a non-SQL Server subscriber, but in our case it's a SQL Server instance. And here I've already connected to Node 2 from this machine, so it already popped up. But in your case, you may not see the server here. You'll want to type in the server that's going to be your subscriber. In this case, it's going to be SQL 2016 HA Node 2. We're going to click Connect, and we're going to say, what is our subscription database? In this case, we don't have a database over there that is our subscriber. So we could name the database the same name we had over on our publisher, or if we wanted to, we could call a new database and we could give it a new name. And in this case, we're going to call it Wide World Importers _ subscriber database. I'm going to change our owner to SA. I'm going to keep the initial size. In this case, the database isn't really large, so I'm just going to keep it the default sizes. If you wanted to, you could change it. If you knew it was going to grow on a regular basis, you could follow best practices here. For the purpose of this demo, I'm going to leave the default sizes. I'm going to click OK. Here you can see now we have our SQL 2016 HA node set up as a subscriber to our publisher, and we've given it a subscription name. Now, if we wanted to, we could add another subscriber here, but for the purpose of this demo, we're only going to create one subscriber. Now it's time for us to set up how our distribution agent is going to connect to SQL 2016 HA Node 2. Over here, you can see an ellipsis. We're going to click on that, and we're going to use the same account that we used earlier. If you wanted to, you could have your distribution agent connect as a different login than it utilized to connect to your publisher. In this case, we're going to use Dan's DC /SQL admin account. We're going to provide it its password, and we're going to, and once again, you could run under the SQL Server agent service account. If you're getting things up and running and you just want to test it out real quick, this is a great thing to do in dev, but I don't normally recommend it. We're going to impersonate when we connect to the distributor. We're going to do it by impersonating the process account. And when we connect to the subscriber, we're going to impersonate the process account as well. We're going to click OK. Here you can see we're good to go. We're going to click Next. Here you have the choice of how often does the distributor agent run. You can say run continuously, or you could run on demand only. So if, for example, you wanted to change the schedule so that every 15 minutes your data that's made it from the publisher to the distributor gets pushed out to the subscriber, you can delay that data for up to 15 minutes. Sometimes I've done that if I want to delay the data because there's folks looking on the publisher side before it makes it over to the subscriber, validating that the data is good. I click Next. Here we're given the choice of when we want to initialize our subscription. We're going to do it immediately, but you could also choose at your first synchronization to do your snapshot. We're going to click Next. And once again, we have the option to create a subscription and generate a script file, and we're going to select both there. So we're going to create our subscription, but we're also going to create a .SQL statement. We're going to click Next. Here's our subscription SQL statement. Overwrite, just making sure. And we get our complete the wizard screen, and here it walks us through all the steps that it's going to run. And we're going to click Finish. You can see here that we've successfully created a subscription and that we've created our script file. And we're going to select Close. All right, now we can go over to our SQL HA Node 2, and you can see here that if we open up and we hit the plus sign beside databases, There's our worldwide importers database. And you can see that we now have our sales table. So keep in mind, with a snapshot, the snapshot is only as recent as how quickly it was taken. So in this case, if there's any data that changes up here in SQL HA node 1 within the sales table, keep in mind that data won't get to SQL HA node 2 until another snapshot is done.